A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily's My Favorite Case. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Everyone in the world of true crime has a story to tell about a case that they worked or that they lived through. Some are high profile, some you've never heard of, but they are all fascinating. Today's case is about a brother searching for justice for his older sister who was murdered in the fall of 1978 in Sherbrooke, Quebec. Through John Allore's determination to find the truth about his sister's death, he discovered a police force that was ignoring the cases of missing and murdered women, and to everyone's surprise, a previously undiscovered serial killer. With us today is John Allore. John's website and podcast are called Who Killed Theresa? John is also the co-author of the book, Wish You Were Here, about his sister's murder. John, welcome to the program. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate that.
And as I said to you before we started, your condolences for everything that you have lost, that your family has lost, and everything that you've been through. So we're very sorry for that.
Appreciate that.
So, John, I'm curious, right on your website, there's a banner and it says, life is unfair, justice is blind, and some cops aren't smart and dedicated like on television.
Yeah, it's a real smart ass kind of thing.
Well, that's why you're on the program. We love smart asses.
Yeah. And that's really, I don't know where that came from. I think it was justice is blind and dysfunctional at one point. I may have got rid of that. But, that's the kind of smart mouth thing my sister would have said. So it really is kind of that, that kind of tough talking. I'm really not that tough, but, let's see if we can hang with it and if it works kind of thing.
Yeah, I can certainly understand. I find that survivors of crimes, whether it is the actual immediate victim or the family members, are the ones who actually become the experts in this area and are always really either pushing the police or doing the police work for them. So let's talk about your sister. How old were you when your sister disappeared?
I was between 13 and 14. There's a window there of, she disappeared in the fall of 78. 5.5 months pass, her body's found in the spring of 79. So between there, I had a birthday. So I was really at that, I was this kind of, chunky, awkward kid trying to figure out the world. And this kind of fell on your lap. And I'm the youngest in my family. So, I'm kind of the guy trying to figure out not only this, but life. Is this what life is supposed to be like? Is this the trajectory that everyone has thrown at them? So it's a very confusing time.
So when your sister disappeared, what was your family's initial reaction? Do you remember what was going on, what your parents were saying and doing?
Yeah, that's not really, I kind of have to piece that together somewhat, not only through, I have talked to them about it, but it's obviously something that we don't return to as a conversation. We'd rather not talk about it, but I have discussed it, and you kind of piece it together through news articles. It's like, well, this was going on, this event was going on. So I remember that. Therefore, I can sort of piece together how I feel. I think my parents were just generally like anyone when a child goes missing, there's that initial phase of confusion, of just utter chaos, of helplessness. Take away cell phones and this kind of thing. There's always sort of like, well, we live 500 miles away, so one of you, the father will go to Quebec, but somebody needs to stay at home and wait at the phone. That's
I think people don't
forget.
Yeah, people don't realize there weren't cell phones, there wasn't the internet, communication was different. You literally had to call home to home. It was just a different time, a different place, and that of course affects the approach, the reaction of police, and the resources available. So your sister, Teresa, was a college student. She was 19 years old when she vanished on November 3rd of 1978. As you said, her body was found 5 months later, about a kilometer away from her dorm, is our understanding. And this all happened in the spring thaw. Once there was the thaw, then her body was revealed. Authorities initially suggested that it was a suicide, or perhaps the victim, your sister, had a drug overdose. Were any of those things true?
No. I mean, it even got sillier, an allergic reaction, a runaway. She was ashamed because she was a lesbian, so she ran someplace to hide. I mean, just ludicrous.
Everything except murder. They were willing to
everything except murder, and this is something that comes up. It's sort of like, so what does the evidence say? What does the documented evidence say? Well, the evidence says, the toxicological report says, no drugs, no booze in her system. And that evidence has been retested in the modern era. No drugs, no booze. The evidence says there was, a document from the coroner at the scene of the crime where the coroner documented marks of strangulation around her neck, and that got buried. So you have an investigator pushing this idea of victim blaming, of, well, something bad happened that caused her to wander off in the night and she just died, but that's her fault. And I think initially you feel like, I think the first wave of is investigative boobery, incompetence, stupidity. But the second thing is, in the face of the evidence, when the police continues to push a drug theory, that's something else. That's something a little darker, a little more nefarious, I would say.
Absolutely. And, that does not help the family in any way to try and change the narrative of what happened and look the other way from where the evidence is taking you. So at some point, so you were very young at this point. When is it that you decided to take a look at your sister's case and figure out what had happened? I understand that there's a person from, way back in your life, a Patricia Pearson, who ended up becoming a crime journalist, and you were connected.
That was part of it. Was Patricia and I had been like high school boyfriend and girlfriend, and so we knew each other, and then went to college and broke up and had other relationships. It's rarely the case, but the relationships survived beyond that. We were able to become friends, and have families and all of that kind of thing. And she ironically became a crime reporter. The biggest case that she did was the Paul Bernardo, Carla Homolka case in Canada, the Ken and Barbie serial killers. And I don't know a Canadian journalist that was not deeply affected by, what came out of that case. And she covered it. So all of that is to say that we developed a shorthand for talking about crime. We ended up in, I think you're LA based. We ended up in LA, and even before murder was on my mind with Teresa, I was gravitating to places like Gretna Green, like where the Black Dahlia was found.
Why? Why visit these murders? What did this have to do with Teresa?
Nothing. It was, in my mind, it wasn't even murder at that point. This was in the mid 90s.
So when did all that change? When did you say, all right, that's it, I'm going to start investigating this?
Well, it's in the book, Wish You Were Here. And the short answer is, we moved from LA to North Carolina, and I bought my first home. And within 6 weeks of buying that home, the police showed up on my doorstep and said, do you mind if we bring a sniffer dog around the property? The former owner's son is the lead suspect in a murder investigation, and we believe the body was on this property or maybe still hid here. That's that. And then it was like, life is telling me.
And was there a body? Was there a body in the home?
There was not a body, but the dog lighted on the ground, and so under the house in the crawl space. It's very LA confidential, and so it was. The consensus was that the body of Debbie Key had been stored there for a couple of weeks before it was disposed in a dumpster in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh my Lord.
But the fact is they had such an earnestness and such a dedication that was really impressive. Okay. And I was like, if these guys can do this, then what the hell is wrong with the Quebec police?
Okay. So then from this point, you in earnest begin your investigation into your sister's death. What did you end up turning up?
Well, I think, as I say, the big piece was, drug overdose. And then this evidence, this document that says no drugs. And the second, major piece was that document that said strangulation. And then come to find it's like, okay, did anybody else die around that time? That was the logical question to ask. Are there any other unsolved murders? And lo and behold, Sherbrooke is a very small, I think at that time it was 80,000 people in 1978. And lo and behold, two other young women died within 19 months of each other, within about a 25-mile radius. So the next question is, are they still unsolved? Yes, they're still unsolved. So that really became like the nexus point for kind of digging. And, from then it became, okay, who else is unsolved? 20, 30, 40, 40 cases in the 70s. And what became obvious was that young women in Quebec, as far as the police were concerned, were collateral damage in their broader interests of chasing bad guys related to gangs and drugs and local organized crime. And if along the way somebody had murdered someone, well, then that was okay. Or they didn't understand sexual murder, in the sense that we have an understanding today.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, as you're looking at these pieces and these cases, were you at some point able to find someone who was sympathetic, either in the prosecutor's office, which I believe y'all call the Crown, or in the police department? Or were you just kind of piecing everything together yourself? Not
at all. No one. I was looking for that kind of super cop, sympathetic cop. And all what I was really getting was smoke and mirrors. I was either getting doors slammed in my face, or I was having people come at me with their hand out. And it became obvious very quickly that they were trying to pump me for information, to kind of see how far I was willing to go and what my true motive was. Was I going to sue anybody? It was all that kind of cloak and dagger kind of nonsense that I didn't have time for. And that's from everyone, investigative forces, from anyone who at the time would have been involved in the justice system, the Crown or prosecutor or defense. The media also did not really want,
I do. I was a street reporter for a very long time. Yeah. And boy, I can tell you, standing in those morning meetings trying to convince the managers of cases that should be covered versus what they thought was news. And yeah, it's to this day we see the problem of families trying to get the media's attention.
Sherbrooke and its larger area, which is known as the Eastern Townships, is the land of Louise Penny novels. Basically, I'm not degrading Louise Penny, but what I am saying is there's a cottage industry around her Armand Gamache and murder mysteries now, where people will travel there and eat in restaurants and want to see the places fictitiously that she talks about. Hillary Clinton vacations in the Eastern Townships. So there's big tourist monies coming in there. So the last face they want to see on the front of their newspaper is this guy saying, you might have had a problem with a serial killer. And you know what? He may still live here. Who knows what happened? Can we, I mean, I think the trope of the serial killer is overused.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like it, quite frankly, on the cover of my book. But that, again, is marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Not that there are not, I would say, yes, that is an angle that I wanted to thoroughly investigate, but it's not the only thing. It's not exclusive of everything else that comes with small town politics, small town policing, all of that.
Sure. I mean, you have that versus you have a very big department that's overwhelmed and not enough time for the smaller cases. It's almost as if you can never find the right balance here. I am curious as to a lot of times when someone, well-meaning, tries to bring up the past, they are met with a very unexpected reaction. One would think open arms, and this includes family members, friends. I'm just curious, what was the reaction as you tried to dig all this up?
My family and friends' reaction? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. They try to be supportive, but I don't think they really understand. I mean, my mother probably has to do this mental exercise in her head of being very supportive of her youngest son, but at the same time being deeply concerned.
Mom's probably is far more aware in some senses that, there's that gut feeling that this could be dangerous. There is a reason people will leave these bodies to be. And I'm not saying that's right, but
yeah.
So as you progressed, at what point was there a change? At what point did you say, were you ever able to identify your sister's killer?
Well, I've learned from investigators not to work in the realm of the good investigators. There are some to work in the arena of percentages and probabilities and to never say 100%. They just don't. Mm-hmm. But there's a few people who are like 70% sure. And one of them was a guy, like a roofer, working class guy named Luc Gregoire, who lived, was involved in crime in the area at the time, had been arrested for several rapes in the right striking points in all of that. He went on, he left town at a very young age, almost as if somebody kicked him out of town. To get the hell out of here, and proceeded to have a very accelerated active criminal career in Calgary, Alberta, and did murder a woman there and named Lanny Silva, a 7-Eleven clerk. And the MO of Lanny Silva's murder matches very, very nicely with the potential assailant in the Sherbrooke murders.
So Luke, in 1993, was charged with the murder of that 7-Eleven clerk in Calgary. He was given an automatic life sentence, no chance of parole for 25 years. He died in prison in 2015. And as you say, not only is he suspected in other crimes as well in the Calgary area. So my question for you is, at the point that you thought that the percentages were pointing in the direction of Luke as the potential killer to your sister, was he still alive when you made that conclusion, and were you able to reach him?
Yeah, I wrote him a letter. I thought, and it was risky. I didn't want to say, hi, it's me. I really, because he was at a maximum security prison in north of Montreal named Archambault, which is it holds everybody, the Hells Angels and everything. And it's like, so the potential dominoes, how they could fall, it was potentially dangerous. So I wrote him a very calculated letter that sort of just said, Mr. Gregoire, this thing happened. And I just said, if you know anything, I didn't accuse him. I just, if you know anything about this, because you work in the milieu, I mean, it was ridiculously polite. It was sort of
apparently.
Like, I don't want you to look at me, too harshly. And surprisingly, I was shocked that within about 2 weeks later here in North Carolina, I got a letter from Luc Gregoire, handwritten, that essentially said, I didn't kill your sister. But it was the way it was written that several people have looked at that letter, including the guy who did all the analysis with the Unabomber case.
Are you talking about John Douglas?
Yes, I am. Douglas.
John Douglas has been on this program.
Really? He's a prince. He was fantastic.
He's the best. For all of you listening, there's a My Favorite Case with John Douglas about a case that he covered. We love John Douglas. So go on. Yeah. So several people looked at this, including John Douglas, and a lot of what they sort of said is it's the way he answers that it was very provocative. He didn't exactly say, I didn't kill your sister. He inferred it, but there was a lot of ego in the letter, and there was a lot of just weird language. And compare that to, so later I sent the same letter to 2 other notorious murders in Quebec, who I know had nothing to do with the case, as an acid test, as a control variable. Oh, that's funny. You're trying to apply a control to this group. Good luck with that, John. Good luck with that.
but that the response was telling. One guy didn't respond at all. That would make sense. And the other guy responded. Claude LaRouche responded. I would just say, Luc's letter was on loose leaf. Claude's letter was on this very proper paper, with art, like winter scene of a Quebec cabin and stuff behind it. It was odd, man. It was odd. And he wrote it in, he used I, not to the point of it being egotistical, but properly, he properly addressed sort of like, wow, this is really sad. And I feel really bad for you. And I had nothing to do with it, convincingly, where Luc didn't.
Was that the end of your conversation with Luc, this one exchange?
Yeah, regrettably. Not that I'm accustomed to, interchanges with violent offenders, but in that particular case, I think I have some regrets that he died in 2015. I know sort of the backstory. I know they polygraphed him, and he passed that polygraph. Big deal. If you're pathological like Luc Gregoire, you can pass that polygraph test. So, but he was just an intriguing. I know they put an informant in his cell to try to get him to say something, but the guy was very cunning, very cunning. So he intrigued me. Yeah,
absolutely. So to this day, would you say that your sister's murder is solved, or would you say it's still, you think this happened and maybe he did it, or where are you in all of this?
I will give you a simplified version. Since the book was published, what is in the book is like a really close, like, depiction of it happened something like this, but there were pieces missing in the book that were filled out when a woman went to my website from Quebec and wrote me last September, and said, I think my uncle killed your sister. And I over the years, I've gotten lots of emails like that. And most of them are like really, it's a lot of bullshit.
Was her uncle Luke or was it somebody else?
Someone else remarkably like Luke, like just lived in the same neighborhood and worked with the same criminal and hung out at the same bars. I mean, all of it was the same. All of it was exactly the same.
So is this person, without revealing too much, is it possible this person is still alive?
He's dead.
Oh.
It's a 45-year-old case, man. I mean,
yeah.
He's also dead. That gives you a lot of freedom, though, when that happens.
It does, where people can piece things together and
say whatever you want, really. Yeah.
When your sister's body was discovered, was there anything forensically that was preserved in any way, either her clothing, anything?
There's the rub. There's the rub. So, what they did return to us forensically, her watch and things, most significantly her wallet. We still have her wallet, which is, we can get to that. That's helpful. But her underwear was disposed of. Her clothing was never found. But with the underwear being disposed of, within 5 years of her being found, has been particularly challenging, but it's not uncommon. In looking at these, I said 20 cases, then 30, then 40. The common denominator with them is less some unifying serial killer. It is really, the commonality is the criminal investigative failures in those cases. To the number, almost all of them had their evidence tossed. All of them.
Yeah, that is hard. That is heartbreaking. I want to get back then to your sister's wallet. What, if any, clues were in the wallet?
So here's the thing. The wallet, in a sense, was also disposed of, in the sense that they gave it back to my father. Gave a piece of forensic evidence. I'm glad they did it, because had they not done that as a souvenir, had they not done that, they probably would have thrown it away. So it stayed in a drawer in a paper bag in my dad's filing cabinet for years, until finally I inherited it. He said, "You're doing this work, you should have this." So I returned the wallet to the police and asked them to forensically test it. And they lifted DNA off it. And it's not my DNA. Because I said, stick me, take it. Because I've touched it, I did, and probably my dad did. So it's not mine, it's not my father's DNA that is on there. They tested it against Luke. It was inconclusive. So but it gets better, because the second suspect I talked to you about, police know this suspect, and they agree that he's a good suspect. So they go to me. We want to test it against this family, because the niece brought it forward.
Right.
The process will take us, you ready? 2 years. The paperwork, that.
I believe it.
In the meantime, they don't realize that I have the wallet. They returned it to me again. they have the DNA, but they don't have the wallet. So within the space of a month, I swabbed the niece. I took the wallet here to a rapid DNA site with our local, one of the community colleges. She did it. Jean Slaughter did it within 2 hours and returned the results to me. They also were inconclusive, unfortunately. But the point is, what is taking them 2 years to do, I did in 2 hours.
I know.
You know this.
We do. We have, we've had some DNA experts on our program. There is one group that, Othram Lab, that we've had on before and continue to have on, because they are fascinating, because they work in degraded DNA. So a lot of DNA labs, if they can't get a full sequence, sometimes they don't have the technology or the software to finish the sequence, or they don't want to deal with something so degraded because it's unlikely they'll be able to help. So this lab works in the degraded area, like they live in that space. And they've just had remarkable success there.
I'm not blaming the cops in this situation. If what they need is someone telling this story to their higher ups and saying, for God's sakes, can you get these guys, can somebody write a grant and get these guys a rapid DNA tester, please? I know.
I think I will say this, though. I hear you on the rapid, but I do believe it takes a little bit longer than that. And I hear your desire to get information, but sometimes, there are reasons for the procedures and so on. Of course, in this case, you're dealing with someone who's deceased. So it's quite unlikely, you're going to worry about this person because you can't prosecute this person. So, okay. So you're still waiting on that. Am I correct? You're still waiting on the official DNA results for this?
The official, yes, because they might, the sample they lifted over a decade ago might be much better, a better sample than what we did. And
totally.
When I saw, them do it here at the community college, it's a very subjective thing. You're guessing where somebody, it's a good guess. Where might they touch? Well, they might touch where money was. And, that's logical. But it is more of an art than a science, that part of it. Unless you canvass the entire piece of evidence, and that would take a lot of time.
So there's the wallet. Were there any contents in the wallet?
Well, yes. There was no money, but there was her bus pass. There was her it's picture of her boyfriend. A ticket to like a college play she went to see. Yeah, and her really these artifacts of life. Her McDonald's badge for when she worked at McDonald's. All of this stuff. Her library card. I still have it. It's because, these things become like touchstones or, holy relic is an overreach, but you get the point. They become very sacred to a family. They do.
Absolutely.
They hold power. They hold meaning.
They do. They absolutely do. I believe that. I believe that with all my heart. These are I hate to say the word, the artifacts, right? But they are the pieces of a human life. Yeah,
I think it's the right word.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. So you're still waiting on that DNA. In the meantime, while this case is still brewing, and you obviously are not giving up, I'm curious. As I was reading about you and went to your website, it sounds like you're like the OG of crime blogs here.
What does that mean?
Oh, like, the original, if you will.
That's interesting. I was there's some truth in that. I started my blog 20 years ago, and at that time, I remember this. I was a little reluctant to do it, but because what was out there for victims were a lot of tribute pages. Pictures of the victim with angels, and she still lives, and it was very nice, but it was not as aggressive as I wanted to be as crime solving. Now that sounds kind of quaint, and now, people are so out there now, but not at the time. I did it because investigative journalism was drying up, and you really needed to, if you wanted to keep the message out there, you needed to do something like Who Killed Teresa to keep the case alive. So I did it. But I was a bit, like, should I do this? Am I revealing too much? Is it embarrassing? All of that. And I say it now because I can laugh about it, because there are people who are much more extreme than I am, today.
So now, what do you do with everything that you've learned?
Well, that's a good question. I've sort of become I think the proudest thing that I'm aware of is, there are many things, but the thing that I would say is, in starting to document on my website case after case after case after case, something that very foundational that happened was because of that. There are other reasons, but because of that, the provincial police, the Quebec police force, the Sûreté de Quebec, created a cold case unit because of not just me, but pressure from people like us. And they added 25 officers, and they put up a website, and I could see, I kept saying, I could see the cases that I was talking about slowly entered onto their site. And, at first it was 2 or 3, and now it's over 700. So slowly to see that, I mean, some of these efforts are static. I'm still disappointed that, their approach is pretty much come to our site, look at the faces. If you know anything, give us a call. And I'm like, come on, guys. That's not, you got to engage people. It's not the way it works. No one's going to call you. No one is going to call you.
Well, my experience is, and this happens a lot, people will call and then they're not taken seriously. So then they'll reach out to me, or I have a partner that I work with who is a retired homicide detective, and the two of us do a lot of work on our own, just trying to help people. And we'll get on the phone with them, we'll get on Zoom, and they'll say to us, well, we went to the police on such and such day. They'll know who they talked to, they'll have had their records. And then we'll say, and how was this information taken? And it's like, well, nothing happened. And then we will contact the police again and say, so this person says that they told you this, and this is the information that they have. I find that sometimes to be particularly helpful, because if there's a third party, whether it's a journalist or a citizen activist or an internet sleuth, however you describe yourself, that if the third party has documented it and then sends it to the police, like what you do, then the police are on notice that someone else is watching. That's one factor. I also do believe, look, these police departments are completely understaffed. They just are. And now in post-COVID or current, whatever you want to, what's going on in our world and so many things, they are. So I do believe that there's room for help. The question is, will they accept the help?
I think you just touched on an excellent point. I mean, I just said they added 25 cold case investigators. The reality about that is that those officers are constantly redeployed for whatever issue du jour arises, whether it's sort of targeting, mass arrests of Hell's Angels, or COVID crisis, or right now there's a situation in the north part of Montreal with a series of murders. And I was told they were redeployed. Now I can vent about that and say, you're not fulfilling your mandate, or I can confront the reality that happens and work within the framework.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, look, do you feel like you've made a difference? I mean, it certainly appears to me that you have.
I do. I mean, I try. It's not all my life, but I do try every day to do one thing that advances and that can take 2 hours. It can take 5 minutes, but one little thing every day to just advance things. Send an email or as you say, when you're in this position now and somebody comes to you and says, someone was murdered and I don't know how to deal with the finding information or the police, as someone who's been doing it for 20 years, I feel there's a responsibility to take a leadership position and help people. If they're willing to be helped, if they're asking for help. Some people don't want to be helped. That's fine.
Yeah, for some people it's too much and they just cannot relive it all. And I understand that, and we have to respect that as well. Everybody handles these tragedies quite differently. So how your website, for example, if someone wants to reach out to you, is that the easiest way for them to connect with you? What's the procedure for everybody?
Yeah, it is. It's really simple. I think my email is right there on the front page. You can, I pondered that a lot, and I was like, just leave your email. You can email me. I'm easy to find.
Yeah. So Who Killed Teresa is the website. And then you have your podcast, which you have available on your website as well.
Correct.
All right. So if people want to find you, your website is Who Killed Teresa. That's also the name of your podcast?
Yeah, the podcast is Who Killed Teresa. The website is just teresaallore.com, TheresaAllore.com.
And the name of your book?
Is Wish You Were Here.
It's been lovely having you on, and I'm sorry for the circumstances that have brought us together.
I've enjoyed meeting you, Anna, and having the conversation. It was great.
You can always find me at Anna G News, Anna with one N. You can find all episodes of all our podcasts, the series which we call My Favorite Case, or True Crime Daily, the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and also to our newsletter. Just go to our website, truecrimedaily.com. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Until next week, this is True Crime Daily, the podcast, a special edition that we call My Favorite Case, reminding everyone, don't do crime.